Welcome to this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. After spending the last 20 years in a variety of leadership positions, and as a student of leadership myself, I started Leading in Dentistry to share what I found and to continue learning with you. If anything from this episode stands out, check out the show notes, our online courses, or one-on-one coaching on leadingindentistry.com. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. For those of you new to the podcast, I am a practicing associate dentist just outside of Denver, Colorado, and I started Leading in Dentistry to help develop the leadership skills of each team member in the dental office, not just the business owner. And I started this podcast specifically while I'm not an owner of any dental practice, as I really want to get across the message that you don't need to wait until you're in charge to be a leader. And in this episode of the podcast, I want to hammer home one of the parts of that introduction where we talk about developing the leadership skills of each team member in the dental office. And this involves building the confidence of different members in the office. And there was a story that came to mind of when this happened a few months ago. Yesterday, I had a patient come in for a recall visit, and I saw this tooth that reminded me of this experience. So it's funny how that happens sometimes. But the patient came in, she was an older lady, and we had done a crown a few months ago on number 17. And we'll get to that part of the story, but she's been kicking the can down the road for many years of putting patchwork composites on this lower left wisdom tooth, and the time had come to convert that into a crown. But before we talk about that experience and why that brought this to mind, I want to go back to earlier in that day before I actually saw that patient for the crown. We had been working with our assistants on developing their clinical skills, and there are many things that in the state of Colorado assistants are allowed to do, but sometimes we feel hesitant to train them. We feel like there's we don't really trust them in order to take certain steps in their own growth, but also it makes our lives easier if we can train them properly and get things taken off of our plate. There's a phrase in leadership that is, only do what only you can do. So if someone else is able to do something, then you can, if you can legally delegate that thing, then take advantage of the opportunity to build the skills of your team so that they can take things off of your plate. So anyway, we've been working with our assistants on a number of different things depending on where they were in their personal development. But my assistant for that day, we were working on doing scans. So after prepping the crown, having the assistant go through and actually scan the crown so that we could send it off to the lab. And we usually what we do is we have them scan the upper and the lower arch, we have them scan the bite, and then the doctor comes in and scans the tooth itself. But this particular day, I was working with his assistant on them doing the prep scan. And earlier in the day, before we got to this number 17, we were doing a crown on, I believe it was tooth number 12. It was an upper left premolar. And for anyone out there who does prep scans, you'll know that premolars can generally be pretty easy. They're more a straightforward case, and if you're trying to train someone on how to do a prep scan, that's a good place to start. The tissue usually behaves a little bit better. It's not so far back. You're not working up against the cheek in order to get that prep scan there. So I thought, this is a good case. Let's go ahead and share this with the assistant. And so I placed the cord. And then the assistants are always there. Every single time I take cord out and do a scan, I tell them exactly what I'm doing so that when the time comes, they know how to do it. So she knew what to do. She knew my steps. And I was there watching her, and she did her best, but dang it, couldn't get that scan of that upper left premolar. And so she was pretty disappointed, and I had to go back and repack the cord, and it set us behind a little bit. And it was basically the morning was thrown off because of that experience, and her confidence was shaken, and I was running behind, and so things weren't so great that morning. And then later on in that day, we had this tooth number 17. It's an older lady. The tooth number 12 was a younger person. I mean, everything was lined up for that to go well, but the tooth number 17, we wanted to have a good experience with this one. So I kind of took the reins throughout the entire appointment, and we got to the point where it was time to do the prep scan. And I just had this thought that what a confidence builder it would be if this assistant was trying to do the scan on number 12, had a bad experience, shook her confidence. She knew she could have done it because she's done it before on other teeth. It didn't go well, but what if I gave her this opportunity to scan this tooth number 17? And so, and not just tooth number 17, but tooth number 17 on an older patient, and just to see how it went. And it's not like there was anything in particular about this procedure or this patient in particular that I thought this would be doable. But I just had the thought, let's give her a chance and see what she can do. We had, it was the afternoon, so we'd already had lunch, so the time had kind of been reset. We're not running behind anymore. So if we had to replace the cord and do a new scan, then it would be fine. So we had a little bit of wiggle room, and I kind of sprung it on her at the last second and just said, hey, how would you feel about doing the scan while I step out for a couple minutes? And she said, okay. So she took the challenge, and she was kind of deer in the headlights look, but she did it. And afterwards I came back and it looked amazing. And it was just, it's difficult to describe the feeling that I think the both of us had during that moment. Because for me, my life is leadership. I talk about leadership all the time. It's something that I care about, and listen to books and listen to podcasts, and it's all I think about. But when the rubber meets the road, you have these opportunities to give someone a chance to grow, and sometimes it's just easier to do it yourself. But in that moment, I went out on a limb to trust her, and she went out on a limb to rebuild her confidence, and she felt up to the task. And I'm just so proud of her for rising to the challenge, not feeling like, no, you do it, I need a day. She went for it, and it went great. And so we had this patient come in yesterday on recall, and I got a chance to look at that crown, and it looked great. And it just brought me back to that experience. So a little bit shorter episode on the podcast today, really just sharing that story. But I wanted to use that as a reminder to just let everyone out there know, I know that you have these opportunities to give others the chance to shine. There's something called the Canvas strategy in leadership and in interpersonal communication, where oftentimes when we want to put something forward, or when we want to speak on something that we know, we are the painter and we're painting on the canvas and we're trying to make ourselves look good. But oftentimes, if you can give other people a canvas to paint on, if you give them the opportunity to shine, it will build a relationship, it will build them, and you'll all benefit. So the rising tide raises all ships. Give people the canvas to paint on. And so a little bit shorter episode of the podcast today, but I wanted to share that story and use that as a reminder to be looking for those opportunities to give your team the chance to grow. And with that, always be leading and always be learning. We'll see you next time. And that's it for this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. If you learned something today, please leave a 5-star review and share the episode with a friend. If you're ready to take the next step for yourself or provide leadership training for a team member, visit leadingindentistry.com to check out our online courses and one-on-one coaching.